We have this function ln of natural logarithm of fractional part of x plus under root x minus 2 into fractional part of x. What is fractional part of x? Fractional part of x is x minus greatest integer function of x. What does that mean? For example, x is 3.1. So then this becomes 3.1 minus 3, which is equal to zero point 0.1. But x is minus 3.1. Then this becomes minus 3.1 minus greatest integer function of x, which is minus 4. Right, minus of minus 4, which is equal to 0.9. Please note, fractional part of 3.1 and minus 3.1, both are not same. Okay, for minus 3.1 it is zero point 0.9. For 3.1 it is zero point 0.1. It is not, please note, it is not the one which is after the point. Right, it is for positive numbers, it is whatever is there after the decimal, but for negative numbers it is the reverse. Right, for example, minus 3.1, it is minus 3.1 minus of minus 4. Why minus 4? Minus 4 is greatest integer function of minus 3.1. Okay, what is the greatest integer? That is less than or equal to this minus 3.1, which is minus 4. So it is 0.9. Okay, so the graph of this function, how does it look? It looks like this orange lines. Okay, for example, when x is zero point 0.5, a fractional part of x is again zero point 0.5. When it is 1.5, it is again zero point 0.5. When it's 2.5, it is again zero point 0.5. It will go to up to 0.9999 like this. If it is 0.8 or 1.8, 2.8, it will go. Okay. Now, similarly for negative ones, please note when it is zero point 0.1, when it is minus zero point 0.1, it is 0.9. It is not zero point 0.1. It is minus zero point 0.1. It is 0.9. Minus zero point 0.9. It is 0.1. Similarly, minus 1.9. It is 0.1. Minus 2.9. It is 0.1. Similarly, minus 1.1. It is 0.9. Like this. Okay. So this is a graph of fractional part of x. Fractional part of x. Okay. Always there is always a break at every integer, because for every integer, fractional part of x is 0. Fractional part of 2 or minus 2 is always 0, right? There is no fractional part. Now, here we are given this function ln of fractional part of x. Obviously, whenever x is an integer, fractional part of x becomes 0, right? So, and logarithm is not defined for 0, right? Logarithm is defined only for positive numbers. For 0, it is not defined. So, clearly, x can't be an integer. Be an integer. Okay. And at the same time, x can't be negative. Wait, x can't be an integer. This is first part. Negative, let's come back later. Okay. Here, ln x, it doesn't mean fractional part of x. Here, in this case, x can be negative. For example, ln of fractional part of minus 3.1 is equal to ln of 0.9. So, as per this, x can be negative. But only thing is, x can't be an integer. In the first part, x can't be an integer. Coming to the second part. Okay. X minus 2 into fractional part of x should be greater than or equal to 0, because this is within a square root. This is within a square root. That's why it should be greater than or equal to 0. What does that mean? 2 times fractional part of x should be less than or equal to x. This one. That means, sorry, should be less than or equal to x. Right. X minus this thing should be greater than or equal to 0. 2 times fractional part should be less than or equal to x. That means fractional part of x should be less than or equal to x by 2. Okay. Fractional part of x is less than or equal to x by 2. Now, fractional part of x should be less than or equal to x by 2. Now, let us look at this graph. Let us look at this graph and try to understand when is this possible. Let's say when x equal to 0.5. What is fractional part of x? It is again 0.5. What is x by 2? It is 0.25. Is this possible? It is not possible, right? Similarly, when x is zero point 0.9, okay, it is fractional part of x is 0.9. This will be 0.9 by 2, so it cannot be lesser, right? So clearly, this part is always, as long as 0 to 1, x is between 0 to 1, fraction part of x is greater than x by 2. Okay, so now let's take this case. Let's say x is equal to 1. Fraction part of x is 0, so that will be less than x by 2, which is how this is fine. X is 1.4, let's say, then fractional part of x is 0.4, and x by 2 is 1.4 by 2, which is 0.7, which is also fine. Okay, so when x is 1.9 or something, x is 1.9, fraction part of x is 0.9. And what is x by 2? 1.9 by 2, which is fractional part of x is actually lesser than 1.9 by 2, right? So what does that mean? As long as x is, please notice this graph, as long as x is greater than 1, greater than or equal to 1, fractional part of x is less than or equal to x by 2. So what we have? 1 from 1 to infinity. Okay, when x is x belongs to 1 to infinity. Even when x is 1, fraction part of x is less than or equal to x by 2, right? 1 to infinity. So this second condition, this one, for this one, what you want? 1 to infinity. Okay. The first one, what we want? Non-integers. Non-integers. Second one, what we want? From 1 to infinity. Please note for negative numbers. Here, why negative integers are not possible? For example, fraction part of minus 0.1, minus 0.9. Minus 0.9 is 0.1, right? This is 0.1. But at the same time, what is x? X is negative. X by 2 is negative. So fractional part of x is always positive. But when x is less than 0, x is always negative. So x by 2 is always negative. So there is no way fractional part of x is lesser than x by 2. As long as x is negative, x by 2 is also negative, right? X by 2 is always negative. And fractional part of x is always positive, right? Fractional part of x cannot, by definition, it cannot be negative. So when x less than 0, the case itself is not possible. Okay, so we are concerned about only x greater than 0, that too when x is from 1 to infinity. Okay, so that's why negative integers are already ruled out because of this. Okay, that is because of this, right? Now, what are the two sets that we have? One is all non-integers, as per this, non-integers, and here the second one is 1 to infinity. 1 to infinity, intersection of non-integers. Non-integers. What does that mean? 1 to infinity, infinity minus all natural numbers. For example, minus 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. Okay, which is the positive integers, or plus z plus whatever, whichever way you call it. So basically, what is the answer? The answer is 1 to infinity minus z minus n, or positive integers, whichever way, or all positive integers minus positive integers. You cannot take any positive integers. Right? If you take any positive integers, what does it happen? Fraction part will be equal to 0. So this becomes ln 0, which is not defined. Right? And when x is less than 1, when x is less than 1, what will happen? This minus 2 times fractional part of x. For example, x is less than 1, 0.5 minus 2 times 0.5, which is less than 0. So this is also not possible. So this is the correct answer. Right, guys?